Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Voices of Healing podcast. I'm your host, Tina Clark. Today, I have a lovely guest with us, Laura Hoorweg, and she is an international spiritual counselor, intuitive coach, and psychic medium. She has a laser like way of seeing relevant details in all the areas of your life. She is perceptive in ways that feel like your own deepest knowing, and she brings compassion, no nonsense presence to her work, and a huge capacity to see and outline the most positive, life affirming way forward. She is a seer and counselor, a refreshing combination. And welcome to the show, Laura. Thank you for being here. I know that you've been healing all of your life, which all of us should be, by the way, working on this. And it is a lot of work. And I know that we're going to focus on a part of your life where you ended up leaving your career and your partner passes away, and how you were able to heal through that journey. So thank you
Okay.
for coming on the show and sharing this story with us.
Okay. Well, I guess I need to start with the exit from my 30-year career in advertising and marketing. I was working for a large newspaper chain for pretty much all of my adult career. And the newspaper business, in case you didn't know, about 15 years ago, really started to go downhill. And it became a very, very toxic environment at work. And they were cutting back staff because the newspaper business was basically going into the toilet because of the advent of online and all those things. So they offered us buyouts, and I just went, "Give me my check," and left. And because I'd been doing that for so long, I actually figured that I would have no problem getting another job because I was about 52 and I had all kinds of business experience in marketing and advertising. And I thought, oh, no problem. I'll just take the golden handshake and off I go on to a new career. Well, I had a very different experience because at that particular point, about 10, 11 years ago, a lot of people don't know this, but there was a huge ageism thing going on. I actually had a really nice headhunter give me some information that normally they're not really supposed to share. And she basically told me honestly that all her clients, of course, were the people that were hiring. They didn't want to see anybody over the age of 45. And I'm like, what? So it was just very, very difficult. The few interviews and things that I got, it was just very apparent to me that that was not going to be my path at this point in time, that I had to be looking at something totally different. And so this was a very shocking thing for me at this point in time, as you might imagine. And I was just sort of starting to recover from that. And then all of a sudden, about going through that process of trying to restart my career in a different direction. And then all of a sudden, my partner died suddenly. And it was very unexpected. He had a heart attack, and then he had a brain bleed, and he actually ended up brain dead. So it was very shocking. It was very difficult because we had to actually make the decision to basically end the life support and let him go. So I was just, at this point, my whole entire world imploded and exploded at the same time. So I was just a mess. And I had to start doing some kind of healing to get myself just back into functional form. And I started getting led to stuff. And the first thing I got led to was doing an experience in Brazil with John of God. And at this time, he was very well known. He had just done some stuff with Oprah, and he was a trance channeler. And he channeled a bunch of very healing entities, and it was a whole process. I originally went there for only 2 weeks on a 2-week kind of group event, and ended up being there for 6 weeks. I stayed another month afterwards. And through that experience, which was incredibly healing, and it was an incredible experience, I was actually led to another experience, which was the ayahuasca experience. So I basically got home from Brazil, and I was only home for maybe 3-4 weeks maximum. And then I was off to this ayahuasca experience in the middle of the Amazon jungle with a shaman, Peruvian shaman, who was incredible and had been doing this work for like over 40 years. So that again was another incredible experience. And it's not for everybody, but I had incredible healing myself, emotional and mental healing. I saw people have physical healings, emotional healings. People healed from anxiety and all kinds of different things. And then I came home again, and then I was again into this situation of what do I do with myself? Where am I going with my career? And I had been part of my healing journey before I did these actual international trips was getting into yoga. So I had been heavily involved in yoga. And I just thought, okay, I love yoga. It's been incredibly healing for me. And I thought that was where I was going to go. I thought that was going to be my next career, that I was going to become a yoga instructor. So I then went on a month-long intensive yoga training in Costa Rica. And of course, as so many things have happened in my life, at several times I've gone through healing journeys where I've thought that I was taking these energy healing courses and different courses in order to become a practitioner. And every time I did that, I ended up finding out that it wasn't because I was to be a practitioner. It was basically for my own healing journey. And the same thing happened with yoga. I, thoroughly enjoyed it. It really deepened my own personal yoga practice. But when I got finished, I realized that it was for my own healing and not to be a practitioner. So these are all things that happen along the way, and just were instrumental in healing me both physically, mentally, emotionally, and psychologically from all these things that I had gone through, kind of one on top of each other. So that's the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah, we just breezed through all that. Well, let's backtrack
Okay,
a little bit, and maybe you can give us more detail about what happened with John of God in that 2-week time period that you were there.
Well, the first 2-week time period, I actually went there. There's people who are, they set up groups and they're guides for your experience when you're there. Because of course you're in Brazil, and some people speak English, but most people speak Brazilian Portuguese, which is like, wow. Like I have a smattering of other languages, but Portuguese is, there's no basis for me to even get into that. So it was very helpful to have a Portuguese speaking guide. And it was an amazing experience. They had, John of God was a healer, and every, excuse me, my voice is doing weird things here. As I said, he was a trance channeler, and every week you would go before who was ever coming, the healers that were coming through him in his channel sessions, and they would give you instructions on things that you were supposed to do for that week. And part of it was the 24 hours after you had your healing with the entities, you had to stay in your room for 24 hours. You weren't, because for energetics, you weren't allowed to be around anyone else's energy. So it was a very different experience. And they actually brought your meals and everything to your room. So you didn't have any contact at all with anybody else or the outside world. And you just stayed in your room, and the healing continued. The entities would come and they would continue to do healings on you. And it was a mind-blowing experience, because several times I was lying there during that 24 hours, and you could literally feel things like, it was like they were operating on you is the best way I can describe it. Like you could literally feel things going on in your body. Sometimes it was like hands, invisible hands were literally going into my body and doing different things. You could feel the energies around you changing. You could feel your emotions changing. It was really I had already done quite a bit of energy healing up until that point, but this was a entirely different process. And it was an incredible process. And there was also a thing that was called sitting in the current. And what you did was there was a bunch of mediums that were lined up in the room, and they were sitting on the sides, and they were channeling energy, and you just sat in these benches. It was like sitting in church, okay? It was like church pews, and you simply sat and meditated. There was 2 sessions. There was one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and depending on how long John of God was actually doing the healings, depicted how long these meditation sessions lasted. But they were usually somewhere between about 2.5 to 4 hours long, depending on whether it was the morning or afternoon. And again, in that, you were in meditation, you just sat and you were totally, your energies were totally internal. There was, you weren't talking to anybody. You had your eyes closed. And again, you could feel things happening and going on in your body. And that was a big part of the healing experience as well. And there were some other things there. It was really interesting. They had a wonderful healing waterfall, and we went and did that experience. And you literally just stood under the waterfall, and it was like, it was a very magical place. The waterfall was down. You had to walk down into like a grotto, and the whole place was magical. There was all kinds of interesting things and experiences that happened there. It was energetically, it was just, as soon as you walked down into the grotto, you could feel the energy. It was just like, it was like a heartbeat almost. It was like, it was pumping. And the actual experience of standing under this waterfall was just amazing. And you did it one at a time. And you had to have special permission in order to visit this waterfall because it was such a sacred place. So it was really a different experience. And I came out of that a very different person.
Wow. So when you say entities, what kind of healing entities are you talking about? Did you know what kind? Were they angelic?
Yeah. Some of them were angelic. Mother Mary spent a lot of time there. There's a couple saints that spent time there's like a whole group. And there was also several doctors who had been doctors like way back when, like we're talking, back in the 1800s and 1700s, that would come forth as well working on people. So it was basically, it was a group. So there was angels, there was Mother Mary, there was some saints, there was these doctors that had obviously from the other side. So there was a lot of different entities. So it wasn't John of God doing the healing. Okay, this is what people don't understand. John of God is just a man. He's just a very simple Brazilian man, but he had an incredible gift for channeling. And trance channeling is different than a lot of the channeling that goes on now, because in trance channeling, the person who's doing the channeling is totally out of the way. Like they're not really involved in it at all. The entities, whoever's coming through them, are simply using their body. Okay, so it's very, very different than some of the conscious channeling that goes on these days, where they are channeling other energies, but they're also involved in the process. This is something very, very different. This is the old style of channeling, and there's not a lot of people that do that type of channeling anymore. It's also very hard on the person who's doing the channeling. It's very hard. I've heard it's very hard on the body because their energy is totally taken aside, and whoever is coming through takes over their body, their voice, everything. So it's very obvious when somebody is doing trance channeling that this is not them. Okay, because the personality changes totally, the voice changes, the energy. If you have any ability to see energy, you can literally see the energy change when each entity enters, or spirit. I don't care what what you want to call it, angel, guide, Mother Mary comes through. You can literally see. One of the great experiences I just loved with Mother Mary is every time Mother Mary came in, the whole room, and this is the big place, okay? It's not a tiny little place, would be filled with the scent of roses. And you could always tell when Mother Mary was in residence, in terms of when she was being channeled, because that fragrance of roses was just so potent. It was quite amazing, actually. I've never experienced anything like that before.
Yeah, she's one of my favorites. I call her my secret weapon.
Well, I actually found out after this experience that Mother Mary was actually one of my guides. Not only her, but also Anna, Anna is actually her mother.
Mhm.
Okay, the mother of Mary. And that was really interesting, because up until that point, I knew who some of my guides and angels were, but I did not realize that Mary and her mother, Anna, were also part of my group. So it was a wonderful experience, because I was allowed to grow even closer, have a closer connection with her, because did not have a religious background. I certainly, like Roman Catholics, have a very deep connection with Mother Mary. I had none of that up until that point. And it was really, that's the other thing. John of God is totally non-denominational. It's not, there is not any religious connections, but there is in Peru. They have their own form of Catholicism. Plus, they also are very have their own form of. They're very spiritualist. They have spiritualist churches and things like that. So channeling and stuff, even though that the sort of base religion is Catholicism, they also have a very, very active spiritual church as well.
Yeah, and how big of a group were you in? Because you said there was a lot of people there.
Oh, people come from all over Brazil, okay, literally in buses. People come from all over Brazil. They also come from, and especially since Oprah Winfrey did the TV special with him, there was always people coming from all over the world. But when he became known that way, there was even more, like there was people from all over the world. But the group that I'm talking about, probably a dozen. There was a dozen of us. We all stayed at the same. They're not really hotels in the sense. They're almost, you have your own room and everything. It's like a fancy hostel is how I would describe it, because there is a small town that the John of God facility is actually a bunch of land with a bunch of different buildings and things on it. But there's a small town that is also just outside. And there's also I can't, the word that they use to describe these little kind of what I call hostel hotels, it escapes me at the moment, but they have a special word for it. And we all stayed at the same little hostel hotel, our group, and we ate together, and we always went to the actual sessions together and all that. So we became very close as a group. But that was the first 2 weeks, because that's how, and then I decided that I wanted to stay. I decided my healing journey wasn't finished. So the leader of our group, she helped me organize to extend my stay another 4 weeks at the hostel and all those things. She was because of course she spoke fluent Portuguese. So that was a real help. And so I ended up staying there 4 weeks on my own, which again was a different experience, because I wasn't with the group. And that also was incredible, being there on my own. But I felt, after having gotten to know how everything worked and everything, I felt totally safe being on my own there. But I wouldn't recommend that anyone do it the first time on their own. I was really glad that I had that 2 weeks with the guide to understand how everything worked, how the process worked, and where you had to be and what you could do and what you couldn't do and all those kinds of things. It was a very interesting experience.
Are you still in touch with the 11 other people in your group?
I was for quite a long time. This is like, we're talking like 11 years ago now. I was in touch with some of them for a long time, but over the course of time, we've kind of all drifted away and done our own things. But there was a lot of people. There was a couple of people there who were instrumental. Like I said, I went from there to my ayahuasca experience, and I learned about ayahuasca and everything from several people that were there. And that's what spurred that whole experience. So if I hadn't gone there, I wouldn't have been led. This healing journey was like happens to so many people. Each phase led to the next phase, and I wouldn't have ever dreamt of doing or knowing about or going to Peru if it hadn't been for some of the people that I had met in this John of God. So
yeah, so I've talked to several people who've done ayahuasca. So what was your experience like? Can you share a little bit more detail about that?
Yes, it was very intense. Okay, this I would not say that this experience is for everyone because it's very, very intense. It's not any. It's about plant medicine. This is not a recreational thing. Okay, it's a very, very intense thing. There's a huge purging cycle with this, and when I'm talking about purging, I'm talking about vomiting and massive diarrhea at the same time. This is the purging process. And but the spiritual side of it was amazing. I was led on so many journeys. Ayahuasca is a combination of a vine and leaves that's made into an elixir that you drink, and it is a psychedelic. There's no two ways about it. It's a psychedelic, and it takes you to another realm. And everybody's experience is different, and also I call them ayahuasca journeys because they usually last about 4 hours. The thing that I experienced in Peru was, again, with a very traditional shaman. There's a circular building. I can't remember what they call them. It was a while ago. But you literally, the ceremonies usually go from about 8 o'clock at night till about midnight, because it has to be dark, okay? Because when you're on ayahuasca, it heightens all your senses, and you can't handle light. So you're sitting in this round building, and you actually have mattresses on the floor, and you have water, and you have something to vomit into. Like I said, it's not a pretty process, but I saw incredible healings. And again, it's not just, it's emotional, psychological, physical, so many different kinds of healings. But one of the greatest, and I was there on a 3-week intensive, but one of the most powerful sessions that I had from ayahuasca was where ayahuasca herself, it's like the jungle goddess, and she can appear in 3 different guises, shall we say. The maiden, the crone, and the snake. Okay. And she appeared to me as a giant python, I guess is probably the only, which was not exactly, which is whoa. And she's like right in your face. So it was pretty intense, but she took me on what I can only describe as a shamanic journey. So she took me on a journey to the underworld. And it was like the classic shamanic journey where you basically die to your old self. You go through the underworld, and then you come back up into this world, a new person. And it was amazing. And there was things that happened on that journey that I was told that I could share with other people. And then there was things that I was told that I could not share with other people. So I followed those criteria. And actually, to tell you the honest truth, after the experience, the things that I was told that I should not or could not share, I actually couldn't really consciously remember some of those things. But all the things that I was told, that I was taught that I could share, that I shared. Because after each one of these journeys, in the morning, you come back as a group, because you do this in a large group, okay, of people, and you come back and you share your experiences, and you work with the shaman, and the shaman helps you to decipher some of the things that went on, and you talk to other people about their experiences, and that's a big part of the healing. The journey itself is quite rigorous with the ayahuasca, but a big part of it is that after part, where you're dealing with the things that came up during your experience. So that's what ayahuasca is all about. And like I said, it's not for everyone. And I would never advise anyone to do it with anyone except a real shaman who has been trained for many, many years. There's a lot of people. I'm actually glad when I did ayahuasca 10 or 11 years ago, because it was when the West was first finding out about ayahuasca. And now it's become one of the things. And there's all these people telling you that they can take you on an ayahuasca journey because they buy the ayahuasca from either Brazil or Peru, because it's available in both countries, and or other places. Well, that's another thing. The actual ayahuasca brew really has to be made again by somebody who really knows, by a shaman or somebody who has a lot of experience making it, because there are it's like buying wine. Okay, it's what I get. There's very different qualities of the actual ayahuasca itself. So one, you need very high quality ayahuasca. And number two, you need to be going through the experience with a real shaman who knows how. And there's not just the shaman, there's also other people that help look after you. Because I'm telling you, when you're in the ayahuasca journey, you're not really capable of looking after yourself or dealing with, sometimes people get into really hyper situations where they need help to get through it. And if you're not in a situation where you've got people who are helping you and who are keeping you safe, then you're going to end up in not a good place. So that's why I said it's not something to be done lightly.
Yeah, and at the time, were you using your psychic medium skills, or did that come out
No,
later?
that was my, well, I shouldn't say no. I had been doing readings for people on the side for a while, but I certainly wasn't right in, and I certainly hadn't developed my mediumship skills at that point. I was working with my psychic skills, but I had not developed my, that's what really brought all my, how shall I say, all my gifts to the fore, and really sharpen those abilities. So that was another process that I went through, and training. I went through literally, in these, and I found out well, how do I explain this the easiest way? The easiest way is there's a shot glass of ayahuasca, and normally they never know. Every person, it's like any other drug. Okay, each person reacts differently to different drugs. Okay, so they never know how a per individual is going to react. So they have a kind of a standard dose that they give everybody the first time, which is about half a shot glass. And I took that, and usually that everybody takes that dosage, has an experience of about 4 or 5 hours, which is about 8 o'clock till midnight or 1. Wow. I am super sensitive to that stuff. And I was what's called on the plateau. You kind of go up this steep hill, which is like the purging course of it. Then you level off when you're in the vision phase, and then you kind of come down. And this is over the course of the 8 hours. Well, I was on the plateau for almost pretty much 10 to 12 hours, because my experience the first time with that dosage lasted from 8 o'clock at night till 8 o'clock in the morning. And Oh yeah, it was pretty wild. And the shaman said, oh, he was laughing. He said it in Spanish. We had a translator, but I could just tell from his energy and his facial expressions. He goes, next time we're only giving you this much.
You didn't need as much as the others.
No, I did not need as much as the others. And actually, what really was interested me, and he told me about, we had several, because I was so intuitive and I was different than a lot of the other people, we had a few personal conversations with him and me and a translator, because I don't speak Spanish. Actually, I wish I had spoke Spanish, because I would have loved to have a one-on-one conversation and not had to worry about the translator. But he pulled me aside, and he was teaching me some stuff, and he was telling me about my abilities and why I was so sensitive and all those kinds of things. And he told me that after I had done ayahuasca a few times, I could be in the circle, I could be in the ceremony, and I wouldn't even need to have any ayahuasca in order to have the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is what the what do they call them? Oh, shoot, they have all these names that I forget. Ayahuasquero, I think, is the word for the shaman dealing with the ayahuasca. And this is what they do as well. Like, they get to the point where they don't need to take any, or a very, very small amount, and they get right into it without it. So I tried it. He wanted me to try it out. I think it was about the third or fourth time that we actually had a ceremony. I decided to try it out without even taking ayahuasca, because I was really skeptical if this was really true. Me, I'm always this skeptic. And it was absolutely true. I had exactly the same experience without even taking any ayahuasca, just being in the ceremony. Because part of the ceremony, the shaman is chanting and he plays, depending on, they play like it's kind of like a maraca kind of thing. There's a beat going on in the background. So just with being in the ceremony and being in the energy of him and all these other people, I had the same experience without even taking ayahuasca.
Yeah, I can imagine I'd probably be like that too, because I've been shamanic journeying for 10 years.
Yes. Yeah. It was, yeah, because that's what it is. It is, they've been using this for thousands of years in the Amazon. Okay. So this is nothing new. This has been literally been going on for thousands of years. It's just new to the rest of the world. And like I said, it probably really got going about 10, 11 years ago, when people really started finding out. And then it kind of, and I'll just tell you flat out, there have been some really bad things that have happened over the past 10 years. People have been taken advantage of. As with anything, there's unscrupulous people that have gotten involved, and you have to be very careful. Because when you are on ayahuasca, you are extremely vulnerable. Like, there's been women who have been raped and molested, and men too, by the way, who have been dealing with unscrupulous people that are only in it for the money, and people that don't really know what they're doing. Okay, there's the other thing. Like, people have actually, you have to be careful. People have had people who have had underlying psychological problems, and with any psychedelic, there's been people who have had psychotic breaks. Okay. So it's not a toy, it's not recreational, and it's not something you want to go into lightly.
Yeah, so you need to do your due diligence,
your
research. Make sure, I don't think I'll ever do it, frankly. But but
well,
for those that want to,
I would never do it again.
Do your research. Yeah. Make sure this is a shaman or shamans that have a lot of experience. They're not in it for the money. They're in it for guiding you through this journey, this healing journey. So you said it took you like 10 hours the first time. So is somebody with you? Are you talking to them? Are you telling them what you're experiencing? What's happening?
No, you don't necessarily do that. It's more of an inward journey, but there are some people, like some people during the experience can freak out, like it becomes too intense for them. Then there are people who will come and they'll talk them down, and they'll get them back into that relaxed state. I never had one of those experiences. I had some pretty intense experiences around purging, but I never kind of, had any experience where I needed to be talked down. It was all of, and I'll tell you, two things helped me a lot. One was I didn't do a lot of reading. Yeah, said do due diligence and all that. But at that point, I didn't. I did some reading and I looked into it. But at that time, I was literally guided. So I trusted my guidance. Okay. So that's a bit different than just going out and deciding to do it. But there was two things that helped me. One was my yoga. Okay. Because yogic breathing really got me through, because there was some very intimidated, very scary things that happened when this 50-foot python is like right in your face with the little fangs kind of hanging down. I tell you, if you don't know how to breathe through that, you could have not a happy experience. And that was one thing that really happened. That helped me, was my yogic experience and my meditation experience. The other thing that really helped me was I read something about always being on ayahuasca. Always, if you get lost, listen to the shaman, because remember I told you they're always playing that music and they're chanting the whole time. And there was a couple times when I kind of felt like I was getting lost, like I was way too far out, and I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to find my way back. So I really used that information. I went, oh yeah. It was like my brain went, oh yeah, listen to the shaman, listen to the music, listen to his chant. And he brought me right back. And, I felt safe, and I didn't feel like I was floating off into Never Land. So
Yeah, that's going to be really important for the shaman to hold the space for everyone going through that. And that takes a lot of energy and a lot of power.
And a lot of experience.
Right. And someone like that's going to have a lot of experience.
Yeah.
So you did all these things. You lost your job. Your partner passes unexpectedly. What were your biggest aha moments after doing all this?
I think I totally looked at myself and my life in a different way. I think beforehand, I was very identified with my career. It was like, I thought of myself more as someone who did what I did, which is a lot of people, they think about a huge part of their identity is what they do for a living. And that totally fell away. And I realized that there was so much more to me than what I did for a living. And I realized that I was doing something that really didn't affect people in a good way. Okay. It was something that people, like advertising and stuff, really was making people buy stuff that probably they really didn't want, they really didn't need. Okay. And I didn't feel like I was putting good energy into the world, and it changed my view. And I really wanted to help people, and I wanted to make a positive influence in people's lives. And that's what led me to what I'm doing now, because I had been doing some of this on the side, like I said, but I went, oh, this is what I can do to make a really positive impact and to help people make their lives work. Okay. And that really came to the fore through both my own healing journey and a lot of the stuff that happened to me at John of God, and through this ayahuasca experience. And then even through my yogic, getting my certification as a yoga instructor. That was also on many, many levels. That was healing physically, mentally, and emotional as well. And that showed me also, well, that's actually what started the whole yoga thing. Because initially, I thought that was my way of helping people. And then I discovered it was really just another phase of helping myself so that I could do the work that I'm doing now.
Mhm.
Because without that training and without that healing, all three of those things, I wouldn't be prepared to do the work that I'm doing now. If that makes sense.
Yes, definitely makes sense. Well, Laura, I love listening to your story. I hope people are inspired by it and are open to doing their due diligence and researching these different modalities. Can you share how people can find you and if they'd like to work with you in the future?
Well, the easiest way to find me is through my website, which is www.spiritspeakstome, speaks to the number 2.me. Or you can email me directly. It's really simple. It's just laurahorweg@gmail.com. I offer several services, which is like private sessions. I offer a longer term coaching and mentoring program. And also locally, I offer my mediumship work where I help people to contact people on the other side and people who are moving through healing their grief. So there's several different things that I do, and they're all going around the idea of helping you heal your life and living your best life.
Well, thank you, Laura, for sharing your story and being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
All right, take care.
You too.